The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Okay, on the line now is a gentleman that is truly the jack of all trades when it comes to ESPN. He's done ESPN's First Take, SportsCenter, NFL Live, Baseball Tonight. It's a true pleasure to give a warm IsraelSportsRadio.com to Mr. Mike Hale. Mike, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being on here in Jerusalem and Israel. And you've accomplished so much already. I want to first start a little bit with your background. We in Israel are, to some degree, a military type of society, if you will. It's something most people do. It's a big part of the culture. You obviously have a military background in the Air Force, so talk a little bit about how that influenced you.
Well, coming from my background, it was necessary that I went into the military at the time I went into it because I needed some structure and some discipline in my life. And the 6 years I served in the United States Air Force, man, where I went and the things that I was able to experience and the lessons that I learned over those 6 years, it shaped me into a large degree into the man that I really am today. A lot of the values and principles that I have are because of the military, of course, from a strong family background as well. But the military basically, put me in a position to be where I am right now. I always say, especially on Veterans Day, whenever ESPN does something on Veterans Day, that if it wasn't for my background, if it wasn't for my military background, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, so I'm very thankful for it.
It's interesting because a lot of people that have served in the military and then go on to do great things, whether it be fame, fortune, what have you, they still talk about the military in positive terms and say how fulfilled they feel from the experience. You feel the same way as it kind of, you say, yeah, I know I've been on SportsCenter and I won Emmys and these, but there's nothing like serving your country.
Yeah, it's a great honor to serve my country, man. Especially now. When I was in the military before, it was a little bit different when I was in, because I was in between 88 and 95, and of course, a lot of times during that time it was a lot of peace. Now, we did have the first war, the Gulf War over in Iraq, and and it was quick, and it was, I wouldn't say it was easy. Of course, it was never easy, but it wasn't during that type of war time. It wasn't until 2001 when the World Trade Centers got bombed and destroyed or whatever, and we went to war again, that I think a lot of people here in this country started really recognizing the importance of the military and started giving the not necessarily the support they did. I've always given the support of the military, but I think they started appreciating the military and the servicemen a little bit more. So I've always been proud of my service and my background. I'm even more proud of it right now because of the men and women who are serving overseas and fighting to keep this country safe and sound. I think a lot of people who never served in the military before really see the value in the men and women who sacrifice their lives or their livelihood to go over there to keep this country safe.
And, of course, you got on ESPN in 2004, and I don't want to beat the military too much of your background, but that was a few months after the whole situation with Pat Tillman, and that was a time where sports and the military somewhat combined. So did you feel the military roots are coming back, and I'm sure you had a different spin on the whole story, but what were you thinking at those times when you heard Pat Tillman, of course, ASU alum, and I'm from Arizona, so I had different emotions, I think, than most people, but what were your thoughts about it?
I think he is the biggest shining example of an American making the ultimate sacrifice that there is. I think we as humans, I think it's important to not just look at what we can get out of something to accomplish, but for him to give up a very lucrative career in the National Football League and a shining, he was a player with the Arizona Cardinals. He wasn't, somebody who was on the fringe of making a team, but he was an absolute beast when he was out there playing on the football field and he was making a huge living and, the great looks and, everything that was surrounding him. He had a great future ahead of him. For him to give that up and to go out there and fight for his country and what he really and truly believed in, he is a shining example of what all Americans or just people, period, should be about, and not necessarily making it about selfish. That human sacrifice that he did for the glory of others, man, is something that should never be forgotten. And his story should be told 10, 20, 30 years from now, just so that everybody can have that shining example to be in their lives.
Well said. I really couldn't say that better myself. Going on to a little more of your background after the military, I know that you've had to kind of work your way up, if you will.
Yeah.
Talk about your time in Dallas, Texas. I know you're a guy from New York, so that's definitely a different culture, to say the least. So talk a little bit how you adjusted to life in Dallas.
Well, I think it was important. I mean, I was adjusted because of, if we want to go back to the military, I think the military also helped me adjust. You got to understand, I was born in New York and so raised there, but then I moved down south to Alabama when I was young, went to high school there. Different experience, and like I said, my background was, I'm writing a book right now. The type of background I had as a kid, you wouldn't see other broadcasters. None of the broadcasters I know have a similar background. I mean, because I grew up in neighborhoods. I wouldn't say the ghetto, hardcore projects, anything like that, but I experienced a lot of things in my childhood that a lot of my peers never would even imagine experiencing, and it helped me over the years. But going into the military actually helped me to adjust to any situation. I mean, of course, when you're in the military, you're in a melting pot. You're in there. I remember my first time in basic training. I remember being involved in being with people in my flight or in my barracks with guys who had never been around black men before, or never been black guys who had never really been around white guys before. So it helps you to adjust to that type of thing. So just having that military background, I was able to make the adjustment once I got into broadcasting, and that's why when I move around so much, and I moved around a lot in my first 10 years of my broadcasting career, it really helped me to adjust to any situation. So when I got out of the military, the day I got out of the military was the day I got my first job in broadcasting in Hagerstown, and then moved to Fresno, to Nashville, and then from Nashville back to New York, and then to Dallas. So anywhere I've gone, I've been able to adjust. And all the experiences that I've gone through, I sort of already gone through while I was in the military, and the ups and downs and the highs and lows and everything like that. So it's been really an easy adjustment because of that.
You mentioned all the stops you made, and I can certainly relate as a fellow broadcaster. We both have this dream, I'm sure, at some point in our lives, hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to get to a certain level and accomplish it. But did you ever have a point where you thought, I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think I'm going to make it to ESPN.
I didn't think I was going to make it in broadcasting, to be quite honest with you. Once again, going back to my childhood, I was born in New York, so I had that New York accent, New York attitude, you know what I'm saying? I was like that. And then I went down south where it was like real country, and I had to talk like this, and everybody couldn't understand me from my New York accent. So it's like a melting pot. I had to basically teach myself how to speak all over again just to get into broadcasting. But once I broke into broadcasting when I was in the Air Force, I sent out 79 tapes to try and get in, just to get that first job in Hagerstown, Maryland. And I think I got 4 responses to 79 tapes. And 2 of those responses basically told me how horrible I was. They were giving me a critique, but they were telling me, hey, you need to work on this, and this in order to get here. And I'm talking about these were markets like in the 150s and 170s or whatever, these early, entry markets to get into broadcasting. But I finally got that one break. And I always tell people, man, that's all you need. If you get that one break to get yourself in the door, you got to make the most of it. So, yeah, there have been plenty of times that I looked at it and I'm like, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to do that, but with the glory of God and, the belief in yourself and, of course, strong family and good friends or whatever, you can accomplish it all. And even though I've been at ESPN for the last 7 years and I've been doing this for the past 16 years in broadcasting, there are still times where, there are goals that you want to reach and, there are frustration levels or whatever, man, but you just got to look back and be happy with what you have and realize that, when it's time and when it's the right time, it's going to be your time.
Again, well said. And the critique I always find very interesting because at the station, I like to call it a different type of energy, if you will. People want to have their own thoughts, no matter if they don't have much of a broadcaster background, whatever it may be. And I say, hey, bring it on. I like that because it's just more opportunities to improve myself or to look at a different angle. So I always look that way. But still, there's a part where you're like, oh, boy, here we go. I got to prove him right again. But you definitely have done that with your multiple Emmy awards, and, of course, that was about high school football. We're starting to grow high school football a little bit in Israel. We have, of course, the IFL, and high school is taking on some momentum. But obviously high school football in the United States, especially states like Texas, California, Florida, et cetera, nothing like this on this planet, really. So what made you decide to write the book? What inspired you to cover high school football so much?